as well?
I won't take one because I won't read it. But
okay, no problem, no problem. Do you know anything about Islam in general?
A little bit.
What do you know? I don't put you on the spot.
Very minimal.
Okay.
I know much more about Christianity.
Okay. Do you know? Okay, I'll give you a brief overview so you just have a grasp of it.
Okay.
Islam is basically a monotheistic faith. We believe in only the concept of one God. Mono means one in Latin, theism, belief in God. We believe that this one God has chosen people through our history to be prophets and messengers to help people guide back to the straight path, right? So Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, peace be upon them all, right? We believe they're all sacred prophets of God, right? And they're normal human beings from the Islamic perspective, and all they did was convey the revelation that would be given to them, to the people, to help people become the best versions of themselves.
Okay, so what's the difference between Islam compared to like Judaism?
Okay. We believe in Islam.
Yeah.
That so the Jews and the Muslims will agree on this point that God is one in His essence, and that He's not human in nature.
Yeah.
So this concept of Jesus being God is separate from the Muslims and the Jews, right? However, Muslims and the Christians will agree on a point where not as the Jews, that we believe in Jesus, peace be upon him, as somebody that actually came upon earth. Right?
Okay, so you guys believe that Jesus is the person that's come upon earth, but it's not a part of God.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Jews totally reject Mary and Jesus, as people of being having any kind of link with God.
Yeah.
We say no. We say that Jesus had the miraculous birth. He performed miracles that God allowed him to perform. God performed miracles through him, right? And God gave permission to perform the miracles. They didn't come from Jesus himself, right? And then Jesus given revelation, it wasn't preserved. That's why another prophet came after Jesus, right? So the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, didn't really come to, let's say, bring something new and different. It was just to reestablish the teachings that Jesus came with, and that Moses came with, and that Abraham came with, and all the past prophets. Because
what did Muhammad do differently?
Muhammad, peace be upon him, just came to a different time, different place, right?
Yeah.
But it was the same message, that believe in one God, right, and follow that prophet of that time, right? So Muhammad, peace be upon him, we believe that Jesus was given a book in his life called the Injil, not the New Testament Bible or the Old Testament Bible, right? We believe that Moses was given something called the Torah, not the Old Testament or the Torah or the Tanakh and Pentateuch. We don't believe this. We believe that these are writings after Moses, not from Moses himself, right? Because it talks about the death of Moses in there. It talks about how humble he is, right? Moses would not wrote that about him. So how can you write about your own death and burial, etc.? So these were biographies about the prophets of the past. They weren't revelation given to the prophet. So that if that was lost, that's why Jesus came to re-establish the teachings of Moses. The revelation that was given to Injil, given to Jesus, was not preserved. That's why Muhammad, peace be upon him, came. All right. So and Islam means to submit your will to God.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean follow of Muhammad. We're not Muhammadiyah, if that makes sense. Christianity means follow of Christ. Judaism means follow of Judah, right? Buddhism, etc., right? But Islam means submission to God. And a Muslim is somebody who acts. The meme, the M in Arabic basically means to act upon it, right? So a Muslim is somebody who acts upon submitting their will to God.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So have you ever read a copy of the Quran before?
No. But I know I won't read it. So
no problem. But I truly believe if you haven't read this book, it has something very interesting to say about the Quran. I'm just going to show you a couple of verses right before you head off, right? And because this is arguing the existence of God from a non-religious perspective, right?
Yeah.
And this one is talking about the Quran.
Okay.
Just want to show you one very interesting thing. There's so many to pick from. Are you a big fan of science yourself?
I'm a big fan of science.
Okay.
I study AI and data science actually.
Okay.
So I'm a big numbers guy and question God a lot of the time.
Awesome. Me, Islam's about logic and rationale. We don't believe in God just for the sake of it, like a fairy tale. Our argument for the existence of God is simple. We say that something cannot come from nothing. You can't have a large amount of complexity in design appear from randomness or chance, right? It's not a strong case.
So
go on.
I respect all religion. I respect you guys' belief as well.
Yeah.
So that's why my questions come out of respect. So then, something coming from nothing, right? I hear that argument a lot of the time. Okay. How can you prove what that nothing did, what that something is that causes that, though?
Good question. We say.
You guys can go back to those spots again. I like this.
So we believe that how do you prove that something can not come from nothing?
No, not that. How do you? I agree with you that something cannot come from nothing,
Yeah.
and that a cause needs to have a cause, right? And so, how can you prove that this came from God, not rather than like, let's say,
Randomness.
Yeah, like not randomness, like the Big Bang, right?
Okay.
So that first explosion came from.
Yeah.
How can you say that Big Bang wasn't an artificially created thing by another living being?
So the Quran doesn't reject the Big Bang, necessarily speaking. There's a verse in the Quran that says that we created the heavens and the earth. Heavens and the earth mean the earth and the universe, and they were a joint entity. Then we separated them, right, and created from water every living thing. This is a verse in the Quran, right? We don't necessarily reject the idea that it was one point and that it spread out. But logically speaking, what my argument to that is, right, it coming from nowhere, right, is that you can't have a dependent existence, right? You can't have an infinite number of dependent existences create independent existences.
Why not?
Because then there is no a dependent existence, but relies on other things for its own existence. So if you keep on, for example, in philosophy, it's something called the infinite regress. Let's say, for example, to put this into layman's terms, I want to buy, what's this in your hand?
A vape.
I want to buy this vape off you. Yeah. I ask you, how much is this vape?
Like £15.
£15,
Yeah.
right? And I want to ask you, okay, can I buy this vape for £15? Yes. But if an infinite regress was applicable to this situation, what would happen is that you'd be like, I don't have authority over this vape. I need to ask my manager. And that manager will ask somebody higher in authority. Say that, can that guy with the blue shirt sell that vape to the guy with the grey fleece? And then that guy will ask, can he sell that vape? And then he'll say, I don't have authority. Can he sell that vape? I don't. So infinite means infinite. Regress means past.
So then, I understand what you're saying.
You can't have cause. There needs to be something powerful enough or independent enough to bring that into existence.
So then, how do we know that powerful thing, right? So let's just say that's God, yeah? How do we know that God created our existence and is affecting us specifically rather than affecting, let's say there's a simulation and then someone created
Very good question. Very good question, right? Something I think upon as well. I think that, to me, logically speaking, right, if I do believe that there's some kind of independent existence out there, right, but I'm not sure what it is, I will then go and search what is the truth, right? Where is the most evidence for the best explanation for what we have out there, right? And the Quran gives a very good explanation, right? Because the Quran says that if this book is from man, right, bring something like it. The Quran challenges humanity, and it has done for the last 1,500 years, right? It says, if you deny that this is a book from that creator, this independent, self-sufficient creator, then bring one chapter like it. Okay. Or bring a book like this, right? And throughout history, people have tried. But, this is why, I encourage people to have a look at the Quran, because it's not just like a book about fairy tales, right? It's a book about science for you to contemplate, and there's so many wonders, mathematically speaking, scientifically speaking, within that Quran. My explanation of that would be that this creator, right, if, let's say, Islam is provable to be true, right, therefore, by necessity, then the best explanation for that independent existence is through Islam. If Christianity is more provable than Islam, then Christianity has the answers. If Judaism is more provable, if, let's say, the concept of an infinite multiverse is more provable, then I will, let's say, take that as my explanation, right? But the existence of God from the Islamic perspective, right, is, let's say, we're saying that he's independent. There's no parts to him. Because anything made of parts is dependent. Something that can be attached or detached or reattached, right? So if you're made of parts, you are a dependent existence. So I hope I've answered your question. Again, if you don't think I've answered it, just ask me again.
I understand, I understand your guys' perspective, I understand, your logic behind, your belief and everything,
So what's your thoughts on there being a creator or not? I want to know. I just want to really know what you think.
I grew up in a heavily Christian community back in America. Okay. So I'm from Texas. So I grew up Christian. And
whereabouts in Texas?
Dallas.
Dallas, okay.
So and so I went to an Episcopalian school for most of my life, and I've grown up moving here. I have friends with many Muslim people, many Jewish people, many people that believe different faiths, right? So then going through that journey, I went through a long time without believing in God.
Yeah.
And so then now I would say recently, is in the past year or two, it's where I come back to questioning religion, questioning God, which I think that everyone goes through, right?
Yeah.
So I'd say that I'm still in that phase of looking at like different religions, looking at beliefs that are more scientific based.
Okay.
I would never believe in like Scientology though.
Okay.
I think that's,
Because science has a limit, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
like
I don't think science has a limit that much.
it does, because I'll tell you why it has a limit.
Okay.
It has I'll recorrect myself. It's dependent upon. It's dependent. What I mean by that is it's limited to the amount of technology, amount of research that we have to our hands to this day, because science has changed over time.
The science that we know has, I think, is limited, right, to what we can explain. But I still think that the further and further we develop it won't have a limit.
So like for example, it's limited at this moment of time, right?
Yes, but I think
But let's say if we progress, it has loads of potential. I'm not saying like I want to make sure you understand what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
I'm not saying that science can't progress. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that science itself is dependent upon us, our research, and the knowledge that we have, right? So, for example, throughout history, people thought the sun did not have an orbit. Until the 1600s, people thought the sun did not have an orbit. But then, due to technology of the time, right, a certain physician, I forgot his name, found out that the sun does have an orbit. It has a small orbit that it follows, right? So, there were so many theories of the past that we had that were then disproven, or they were proven right. So what I'm saying is that our science and our understanding of everything will be limited if we only follow the science itself, right? Islam says, use logic and rationale, right? And science itself is based upon logic and rationale as well, right? Throughout history, it's called the philosophy of logic, right? That's where science actually stems from, right? So, and Islam says that whatever logically makes sense, that should be it. But I want to give one argument for God's existence, which is a ontological argument. Do you follow when I say ontological?
No, sorry.
Sorry, it's okay.
I'll be honest.
Ontological means proofs using logic, right?
Okay.
And because there's multiple kinds of proof within the realm of philosophy. So you have empirical proof, where you use your five senses to basically prove something. So let's say if something can be put under a microscope or a telescope, right? You know that this exists. You can measure it basically, right? You can measure sound, you can measure liquid, etc. Therefore, these can be proven empirically. But not everything can be proven empirically. And I'll give an example. For example, something non-tangible, abstract ideas. For example, mathematics. The number 2.
Okay.
You can't smell the number 2 or lick the number 2 or taste what the number 2 is, right? But it's an abstract concept that we use in our daily lives. Love, the concept of love. You can't measure love, right? You can't put like a measurement on love or put it under a microscope or put it in like measuring a cylinder or everything like that. But you know that exists due to logic. Justice, hatred, all these things, they're abstract concepts, right? But we know that they exist using ontological proof. Similarly, we say is ontological reasoning for the Creator Himself, right? And a very sound argument by a guy called Avicenna. Avicenna is the father of medicine, also known as Ibn Sina, right? Avicenna is a Latinized name of his. He says, his argument goes as follows. He says, you have multiple kinds of existences. You have dependent existence, necessary existence, and an unnecessary existence. No, actually, that's not. Sorry, my brain is brain farting.
I understand. You can continue from there. It's okay.
Yes. He says that you can't have an infinite number of dependent existences, right? Creating dependent existences, and therefore he says that anything that is independent as an existence, not anything that is necessary, right, is independent. I'll explain what that means, right? So anything that is dependent relies on other things for its own existence. So yourself, you rely on air, water, sleep. The universe has parts to it. It has the universe. Jupiter relies on gravity. So does the planets, right? There's an electromagnetic constant within the universe, right? That basically keeps our atoms together, right? Keeps shapes together, right? So there's certain principles within the universe that are dependent on each other, right? We say that you can't have an infinite number of just dependent existences that bring about dependent existences. There has to be an independent source.
Yeah.
And he uses an argument using set theory, right? He says, for example, if this is one set here, right? 1, 2, 3. Right? He says if this is a dependent existence, and this is a dependent existence, and this is a dependent existence, right? And they all create one set, right? And book 1 is dependent on book 2, book 2 is dependent on book 3, vice versa. They all depend on one another, right? He says that this can't have just come about itself. There had to be an independent source that brought this into play. Because why? Because they're all dependent on one another, right? Okay. That's a simple argument using set theory. And he uses like like ABC, right? Brackets of ABC, right? He says if A cause B, B cause C. This makes sense. But he says if A cause B, B cause C, and C cause A, this is impossible because that's a circular and that's impossible. That's like things existing and not existing. So either this universe came from nothing, or it came from, let's say, something, right? Or this something was created. But it can't have been created because the infinite regress is impossible. So we say an uncreated creator made this universe.
Yeah, I understand your guys' perspective. I've heard a lot about uncreated creators.
I'm going to show you a verse from the Quran. Okay, I'm going to show you just a few as well. I've got them noted out there as well, just for reference. It says here, and certainly we did create man from an extract of clay. So this is talking about Adam, peace be upon him, right? Then we placed him as a sperm drop in a firm lodging, i.e. the womb. Then we made the sperm drop into a clinging clot, and we made the clot into a lump of flesh, and we made from the lump bones, and we covered the bones with flesh. Then we developed him into another creation. So blessed is Allah, the best of creators. Right? The word here used for clinging clot in Arabic, in the Arabic of the Quran, is alaqa. Alaqa means multiple, because Arabic language is very rich. Whenever there'll be loads of languages more richer than, let's say, the English spoken language, right? So Arabic itself can have several meanings within the English language. So clinging clot, alaqa means clinging clot, leech, worm, like a chewed substance, right? And the Quran uses that word specifically to talk about the embryo, right? That is in the early stages is clinging clot. If you go home tonight and you look at what does the embryo look like in its early stages, it looks like a leech. It looks like a black leech. But the Quran is hinting to this 1,400 years ago, right? With no technology, no science, no technology where you can scan the fetus or the womb, right, to see what the embryo looks like. But the Quran is hinting to its characteristics. And a professor called Dr. Keith Moore looked at these verses and said that this depicts a very accurate representation over the embryological process. So how does the Quran know this 1,400 years ago? It's a very good thing. Prophet Muhammad couldn't read and write. Right? He lived in the desert all his life. So that's one. I'll show you this one as well. Appreciate your time, my friend.
Yeah, of course. I love to learn. I love to listen.
Likewise, man. I love. I do this for free, man. I don't get paid to do this.
Yeah, I know you.
It's just a hobby of mine. It says this. So this is another chapter now, right? It says in verse 47, and the heaven we constructed with strength, and indeed we are its expander. Heaven meaning the universe, right? So that concept of the expanding universe, Allah is already saying that we are its expander.
So this is heaven.
No. So Allah refers to the earth as ard, right? Okay. So the word here is as-sama. Like we believe that heavens has levels, right? Yeah. So this is all within the first heaven, right? This is not heaven itself, right? Yeah. But past this, you'll get to the first heaven, and after the first heaven, and second heaven, third heaven, fourth heaven, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger in size.
How does that work? And what does the next heaven look like? Or do you guys know that?
So the Prophet Muhammad gave us narrations of what it looks like.
Okay.
Talks about things of the unseen, right? Where like angels, right? That they can travel fast, very fast, faster than the speed of light, right? Get from one place to another, and heaven itself as there's no pain in heaven. You don't need to sleep, eat, right? It's a place of peace, place where you don't agitate. It's just constant bliss. That's what we know about heaven. We know that there's no hardship in heaven, right? It's constant enjoyment in heaven. That's what we know about heaven. But in terms of what it looks like and stuff like that, only thing we know is that it's big. It's very huge, right? But it's saying that we are its expander. So talking about the universe, right? Stephen Hawking came up with this theory, right, of the expanding universe in the 20th century. He wrote in his book. The Brief History of Time, right? He wrote this book, right? And in this book, he talks about that. He presents this theory in the 20th century. So 1,400 years after, Quran is already hinting, early, right, that the universe is expanding, right? That's just one more. I'll do one more with you.
Yeah, I'll listen to one more, and then I do have to go study. But
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate your time, my friend.
There's no worries.
So here, have we not made the earth a resting place and the mountains as stakes? What do you understand by stakes?
So, like staking something in the ground.
Yeah, like the root is deeper than what's on top. We know Everest is about 9 kilometers high, and guess how far deep it is on the ground?
I don't remember. Yeah, I haven't done.
Just take a
that in
number.
while.
Just take a number.
But like 100,000.
That's a lot. I know. I asked you. 125 kilometers. So it's 9 kilometers up, 125 down.
Also,
Right. So Prophet Muhammad never traveled, right, to regions of mountains, right? But he said that, and God is saying that we create mountains as stakes, right? Meaning that, they have deep roots in the ground, right? How does the Prophet Muhammad know what mountain, if the mountain is a stake or not? How does he know that, right? And another part of the Quran, it mentions that the mountains are used as roots to prevent earthquakes. And he has cast into the earth firmly set mountains, lest it shift with you, and made rivers and roads that you might be guided. Right? Yeah. So it's talking about the tectonic plates, right? That the mountains have an impact. And we know now due to the 20th century, this rise of the information of the tectonic plates. We know that the mountains have an impact on whether there's an earthquake or not, because they act as a deep stake, right? So how does the Quran know that? In another part of the Quran, it talks about where the two seas meet and they don't mix. In South Africa, right at the bottom, there are two seas that don't mix. One's like brown, one is like blue. And how does the Prophet Muhammad know about these different places on the planet, right? That the water doesn't mix. We know because surface tension, there's different densities within the water. That's why they don't mix. But how does the Prophet Muhammad know that when he's in Arabia, right? And he never went to no school, right? Doesn't have any kind of formal education, right? Was illiterate, couldn't read and write, right? And that was like a sign from Allah that He's given him this, infinite amount of knowledge and wisdom, right? As a sign that this is coming from something above, right? Something that has knowledge over everything. So,
yeah.
So there's no harm in taking it and reading it, right?
I'm afraid that I'll take up a space because I can look it up. I know I'll look it up online.
No worries.
I just don't want to take up a space. But yeah.
It's lovely to meet you, my friend.
Thank you for your time. Lovely to meet you.